Hello and welcome to Majoring in the Minors, a series covering the North American Academy scene. The finals just took place and featured a powered-up Cloud9 defeating a TSM who peaked too early into the season. This video won't be covering the finals, even though I think it's a worthy series to watch in its own right. Instead, I just wanted to take a few minutes and briefly talk about each Academy team, what they did correctly, what they did incorrectly, and point out a few players who stood out. As a small tangent before I get started, I know a lot of people get outraged when I cite any statistics at all. But just know that when I do, especially over a big sample size like this, I do it to illustrate a point. I'm not saying that these players are good due to their statistics, just that these players are doing something well, and that is portrayed in their statistics. Treat it with some nuance, and don't be such an anti-Pythagorean. I will begin at the bottom and work my way to the top of the standings, beginning with Team Liquid. To be honest, it's difficult to talk about the good for Team Liquid. I think the biggest positive they have is they at least look willing to make changes when they dropped Yama. They're clearly not content being 10th, which is the greatest positive I'm willing to give the team. I've already made an entire video talking about all of the negative things I've seen about TL, but if I had to throw one out there, I think they're poorly managed. There's no real reason for Yasui and Yama to ever be on the same team to begin with in my mind. The real standout player on Team Liquid is Yasui, no surprise. He wasn't overly remarkable this split, but when most games are Yasui struggling against a bottom lane that rarely isn't a burden, I can understand why his performances declined as the split progressed. In 9th stood FlyQuest. They had some of the most explosive players in the league despite ending their run in 9th place. A lot of my video early in the split stood true. Mash, Fnatic, and Triple were quite good most of the time, but Revenge and Big were a hindrance to their success as a team. Fnatic and Triple in particular didn't really work well together stylistically. I like the idea that Fnatic's aggressive early game playmaking can expedite Triple's scaling and allow him to carry the game, but in practice this rarely worked. Additionally, I don't see the point in picking Azir for Triple so much. He played it 7 out of 18 games, and if anyone knows anything about Triple, it's that he's good at Azir. Triple could hypothetically be the best Azir in the world, and it wouldn't get him a place in the LCS. I'd rather see Triple try something new, and while it might not work as well, it would better develop him as a player. He's too narrow at this point, especially for being around for so long. I think FlyQuest's standout player is still Fnatic. I think I said that he was the best jungler in Academy in my FlyQuest video, but that's not the case this split after the meta swapped. He's still good, but not at the top of the league. He had the second highest kill participation out of all starting junglers, and his early games were still exceptional, but it's clear that his inert laners are neither enabling him nor making great use of the advantages he's creating in the early game. Immortals came in 8th. I don't know if it was a confidence-related issue, but I thought Potluck's performance was not up to the caliber he showed both in LCS and in Academy last split. I wish him the best, but some of his decision-making was very poor. I still see a lot of talent in him, and I definitely don't think that he should be dropped, but I do sympathize with him, and I want him to show us the performances he had earlier in the split. Otherwise, Immortals was a much more top-focused team than a lot of other Academy teams, and I thought Soaz was solid. Aika was not very good, even by Academy standards. Altek played solidly, even when he was given minimal jungle attention, but I thought Gate was by far the weakest link on the team. Teams with low cohesion struggle with engage more than anything, and typically it's the support that's left out to dry in that regard, since the meta throughout most of this season has been engaged supports, but a lot of Gate's deaths were just flat out unnecessary. Between Soaz and Altek, I'd have to give it to Altek. A lot of IMT's victories later in the split were off of fantastic performances from the ADC, and while I don't feel comfortable saying any of these players had a good split, I do feel for Altek since he did well in spite of what was stacked against him. Just outside of playoffs in 7th was Dignitas. I thought all of Dignitas' players were very solid. I think that Viper's substitution into the Academy squad had a pretty negative impact on the season. Also, Dardoch's performances early when he was on Academy were very dreary too. On the other hand, I thought all of their players played well, despite fumbling right at the end of the season and not making playoffs. Not going to lie, I like Doric, but some of these drafts were really whack. A good example was Dignitas versus Team Liquid in Week 8. Dig 1-2 Callista Thresh on red, R4 blind Lee Sin after R3 Twisted Fate, and then lock in Vlad last pick into GP because they have no magic damage aside from TF. On the other hand, some of these drafts were amazing too. I don't know if he actually started drafting at this point since this was the first game Dig played after he joined, but their match against 100 Thieves was really great. The Ziggs really screws with 100 Thieves' 1-2, and it covers for the Kindred answer to Graves. Bard works fantastic with it due to having multiple zones of control, and both champions facilitate Graves in the fights. Orianna is a great analog to Karma in the mid lane while playing carry junglers too. That being said, it's no surprise that Dig didn't make playoffs due to their bad start and random losses to teams like Team Liquid. Picking a player on Dignitas is difficult. They were each good, but I have really high hopes for Asta in particular. I thought Froggen and Acadian both played better individually, but I was surprised to see Asta hold his own in one of the more stacked roles in NA Academy. Statistically, he's nothing to write home about, but I do see a good level of potential in him, and it makes me happy to see a player who's a staple of North American Amateur do well the minute he's dropped back into Academy. Ending 6th in playoffs was 100 Thieves. I thought Breezy went from one of the worst supports in the league when he was subbed in to one of the best very quickly. I thought Kenvi did well despite being dropped in late into the season. I am a little bit concerned for Saligo's development though. I think he's a good player, but all of these carry junglers are stylistically hindering his development. This may be tangential, but there is a very clear reason why a lot of North American mid laners are the stereotypical support style. Think Golden Glue or Insanity when he was in Academy. North America is oversaturated with carry junglers, and it didn't help that Meteos randomly wanted to start playing Kindred, Graves, and Olaf when he was demoted to Academy. I wish I could see a 100 Thieves where Saligo was the carry. I think stylistic variation is an ultimate driving force in player improvement, and a really good example of that is in a player like Palafox, who had to play every way under the sun throughout his career. Other than that, I know she's praised a ton, but if any of you guys know me, you know I'm willing to be the bad guy. I think a lot of Kelsey Moser's drafts were really bad. I don't know how much actual say she has in draft phase, but man, these things can be awful. A good example is in their playoff matches against Evil Geniuses, where they had an extremely strange priority on Ezreal Vault champions, and let Gio get one of the 2 champions he's capable of playing at a major region caliber. I get Prismal is really good at Ezreal, and it's extremely comfortable for him, but if you're banning Caitlyn, who is an Ezreal counter on blue side, and then preferring Ezreal, and then leaving Gio's extremely niche champion pool open, and your answer to the Akali is Orianna, I don't know what to tell you. It's just not going to work. It's not that I don't have any respect for her, she's very smart, just that there's clearly something wrong with these drafts, and I'm under the suspicion that Prismal wasn't ready to play Caitlyn, which shows something seriously wrong in the coaching infrastructure here. It's just really inexcusable. Otherwise, I thought the MVP for 100 Thieves would likely be Fake God. I thought he played very well, and while he didn't have a fantastic series against EG, I think Kuma was easily an LCS caliber player, and his team was just better composed than his, alongside having a superior draft. Golden Guardians ended technically tied with 100 Thieves, but I thought they were the better team. Golden Guardians were seriously underrated, and they had some fantastic players. I think they had the 2nd or 3rd strongest topside in the league, and Chime improved a ton across the split. That being said, I think Keith had one of the worst splits of his career since he entered Academy, and Hard got obliterated by Fragus against CLG. I thought Ablaze Olive had some uncharacteristically bad games too. I think at their peak, Golden Guardians have the potential to be the best or 2nd best team in the league, but I don't think this team came together as well as they could have. It's hard to explain, but I don't think this team was set up for success well. I know that Ablaze Olive is capable of carrying, and Keith had been capable of carrying earlier in his career too. Maybe it's just a weird jungle synergy issue with Hard, but it just didn't pan out as well as it should have on paper. Zion Spartan received the majority of jungle attention, and I'm pretty sure they were an exclusively topside team. That doesn't excuse Keith's performance, as we will see a different ADC who is just fine in spite of that. It felt like that if Hard ever fell behind, he would just stay behind on picks like Graves. Weirdly, on the other hand, he was one of the best Nidalees in the league. Overall, I thought Zion Spartan was far and away the 2nd best top laner in the league, and there were points where he looked like the best. I definitely think that he's still an LCS caliber player, and he should be the first player to look for if LCS teams want to pick up a carry native top laner. My only concern is that he got so many jungle resources over the split, so I don't know if he still has a tremendous amount of versatility despite being such a long-standing veteran. I wonder what EG's main squad would look like with Zion in the top lane instead of Huni, and Jizuke in the mid lane instead, but it probably wouldn't have mattered much. Zion only had 0.1% gold share away from being tied with first, the highest kill share at 29.1%, and the highest kill participation at 67.6%. Golden Guardians were the definition of a topside team. CLG was probably the weaker team between the 2 semifinal teams, and I'll keep it brief since I made a video over them recently. I thought their drafts were really good, but they had a bit of a fumble in their match against Cloud9. I thought they were very creative in overcoming their weaknesses, such as by using Vi as a crutch for their lack of coordination. Individually, their players were not very good relative to the rest of Academy, but they made up for it in other ways. I know I received a lot of backlash for my video on CLG for how I traded him, but I will pay my respects now. Deus is very good. I clarified it in the comments when I was confronted by it, but Deus is by no means mediocre, and I didn't mean it to come off that way. Top lane is a pretty stacked position in NA Academy, but Deus is very good in spite of that. He has a unique champion pool since he swapped from middle lane, and I think he utilizes it very well. While he got put on the back burner against Cloud9, I thought Deus showed a lot of versatility in his play. I'd also like to say that Wind was fantastic, but I wanted to shine a light on Deus for my pick, because I do think he was one of the shining lights for CLG. Evil Geniuses was very narrow stylistically, and that was mostly due to their mid laner. I think Gyu is easily LCS tier on his Akali and Irelia, but I think he's mediocre on anything else. Otherwise, I don't have much to say due to how boring they were to watch. I thought Deftly and Matt were the second best bottom lane in the league most of the time, but I don't really like seeing Matt on melee support so much. I think he's a lot better when he's given counterpick and really shows his capability of dominating the lane, but I'm willing to excuse that under the guise that this is him learning to be more versatile. I thought Kuma was pretty bad relative to his good performances in LCS, but I can hardly blame him for playing poorly since I thought he was a better player overall than Huni from the outside looking in. My pick for the best player would easily be Onda though. I think he was the best jungler in Academy this split hands down. He stumbled a bit in the last match against TSM and a little bit in the early season, but he had some very good pathing. He wasn't the most active early game jungler, and EG wasn't really known for their insane first blood percentage or anything, but Jesus, Onda could jungle gap some kids. He had the highest kill participation percentage and the second highest CS per minute, and Gyu wasn't even a top 5 mid laner. I think a lot of people are sleeping on the talent Onda still has. I don't think he's a plug-and-play jungler, but I would really like to see him with a mid laner like Palafox, because I think both players lend a high degree of versatility. Team Solo Mid fumbled a bit with Biofrost, but they easily had the strongest bottom lane in the entire league. I know it's fashionable to hate on him right now, but Treats gets an absurd amount of hate for how well he played, both in LCS and in NA Academy. Just because he got bopped by FBI and Huhi doesn't change my opinion of him. I think TSM's LCS squad is not a great place for Treats, since he is a big voice, but doesn't have the accolades to be a leader when he's playing with players like Doublelift and Bjergsen. If there was a Mad Lions for North America, Treats would be a brilliant choice for support. TSM's topside was pretty weak relative to the rest of the playoff teams, and I thought Dokla was the worst top laner in playoffs, and he really got exposed by Cloud9 in their final match, despite getting counterpick in 2 games. Winston wasn't great, but he was definitely the most improved player throughout the entire split. Peter Zhang is the North American king of the jungle, and I've only heard fantastic things about him from junglers who have been under his tutelage. Evolved and Winston made a solid 2v2. I think the star of TSM is Lost though. Even though I've talked so much about Treats, I think that there are a few supports in NA Academy that are comparable to Treats, but I think Lost is far and away the best ADC. He was a total maniac. He led KDA and KPAR percentage for ADCs, likely because TSM were the archetypal bottom side team, but that just makes C9 getting Ashe all 4 games of finals all the more inexcusable. I understand the Senna, but I'd rather just TSM all in on Lost, because he deserves it. And finally, the world champions of 2020 NA Academy, Cloud9. Anticlimactic, but I'm not going to waste a lot of time on these guys. Inori was fantastic and is likely an LCS caliber jungler. Diamond is a great support, likely LCS caliber himself. Fudge and Palafox are definitely LCS caliber hands down. They're the best players in their respective positions, and Tomo is good too. They always play to their top lane, and that's fine because Fudge is probably the best player in the entire league. I kinda lied when I said Winston was the most improved player in the entire split, because I think Tomo may actually have improved more, but it's very hard to say. I think bad junglers get punished a lot harder than bad ADCs, so it's difficult for me to make a statement over just the actual matches. But that being said, Tomo is still probably the worst player on C9A, but that's not me being mean. Tomo came in as a substitute and a total rookie, and immediately just won NA Academy. He's not LCS caliber, but he's definitely on the correct track. C9's coaching staff did a great job, and whoever did their talent scouting is clearly really good too. I thought Tomo was one of the best free agents available, and they worked their magic. Far cry from Tomo tier. I can't wait for Cloud9 to make millions of dollars selling off their Academy players' overbloated contracts to failing LCS organizations, and we will lose at Worlds again. Oh yeah, And Fudge is the MVP. I'm not going to say much more, I already made a video over it around 2 months ago, and everything I said holds true. That's it for me. If you watched this far into the video, make sure to comment, "Fleer, can I have that scrim?" in the comment section below. I guess Academy is over, so I will have to find something else to make videos on now. I'll probably think of something, but it might be a while. Thanks for following with me through the split of Academy, and thanks to my graphics designer King as always for helping with the thumbnail and graphics for this video. And until next time, thanks for watching.